If you're overwhelmed, paid, or just tired of working with the wrong people, it's probably because you haven't had the year of the no yet. I did, and it changed everything. I was in this cycle of saying yes to opportunities that just didn't quite feel right. I had clients that were draining me and partnerships that didn't align. And I remember reflecting on a year previously where I'd had a different word of the year. It was before it was cool. And I was thinking about what did I need to change for the year ahead? What was coming next for me? And I had a conversation that actually made me realize that I wasn't growing because I wasn't saying no to enough things. And that was definitely me saying yes out of fear. I was a salesperson. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to say yes to all the things and take on all of the opportunities. And so I followed a framework, which I've now reflected on and called it the 3 F's. It's allowed me to make better decisions, but also knowing that saying no to things are more impactful. So the 3 F's. So I created a filter, and that's who do I want to work with, as well as what are my values. And if it doesn't pass the filter, then it's a no. No matter what the money, no matter who it is, it's a no. And I created what I call the core focus around this filter. And that helps me decide who we're working with, how we can have an impact. And I know that when I go against the core focus filter, things just don't align. Things get more challenging. There's a lot more work involved. We have to go above and beyond outside of the remit of what we actually offer to achieve the outcomes, because we've said yes to something on a whim, or we said yes to something that doesn't quite align because we think it's the right thing to do. And so for me now, that core focus is what we live and die by. And I can tell how I feel if I'm about to say yes to something when I shouldn't be. Now, this still applies for salespeople and business owners. And this for me started as a salesperson. And I found that by creating a filter of who I wanted to work with, and that was taken from how or who I'd engaged with previously and how I had decided or how I broke down what made them a fundamentally great client. And so when I understood that, I created a filter from the great clients so I knew who I wanted more of. And that then allowed me to create what I didn't want and what wasn't working with me. And so that's the filter process. And so I recommend having a filter. So who do you want to work with? And if it doesn't pass the filter, it's a no. Then the second F, so the 3 F, second F is fire. This came the hard part, and I had to fire clients, commitments, collaborations, things that no longer align. Now, I remember when I first let go of a client, and I definitely did a few of them while I was selling. It wasn't as scary because it wasn't my business. It was my commission, but it wasn't my business. But I found it really freeing because the reason why I had to say no to them was that it was no longer aligned. It didn't fit my filter. Now, I didn't just decide decide tomorrow that that's it and get rid. It wasn't as quick as that. But I looked at how do I feel when I'm with that client? And what I realized with one of these clients was that I was making a lot of money from them. They were an industry aligned client, but the way that I was being required to deliver the content and the training just didn't align. And so I did have to remove myself from that client. Now, I did it in a very professional way. It worked really well for both of us. We made it work well for both of us. And the outcome was that we're still connected today. And that's because, just because something doesn't align anymore, you never know what will change in the future. So the commitments, what I say yes to, what I say no to, this also, the fire part comes into my relationships, my friendships, the way that I spend my time is also how I decide what I say yes and no to in both sides. And then the third F, so we've done filter, fire, the third F is fuel. And this is the real surprise, is that saying no to people that didn't align within that filter created space, and it created space for aligned clients and strategic growth and better results for those clients, but also for me and my business and for me as a salesperson. The no became the fuel, not the fire. And it was a real turning moment for me at the end of that year. I remember the very first year I did this, at the end of that year, reflecting on how powerful the idea of saying no that year and finding things that didn't align and creating that filter and then firing and removing things out that just didn't align had a massive impact. And so the results were there. I've shared a couple of them there. But what happened next for me was that the revenue was up and so was the profit. And what that shares is that what that really told me in that instance was that I could keep doing a great job, but I was able to achieve more with people that aligned. I was able to deliver a better result for them because I was aligned and very focused on who I was working with. And there was no friction in what I was doing in a day to day. So my revenue was up, my profit was up, and the right clients were finding me. When I said no, previously, I remember it being around, that I was saying no because I didn't think I was going to win something. Whereas now I was saying no, or in that first year, I was saying no because it didn't align. And what happened was they just wanted it more. And so later on down the line, when I was able to create an offering or a service that would therefore align and potentially be able to help them, not always, but you never know what will happen in your business, you could then go back and the trust is there. Or if the reason I was saying no was because they weren't quite ready for a service or a product, it meant that they went away and spent the time to be ready and then were more aligned and excited about us working together. And that was because my message was finally clear. And so if you are thinking about doing this, the saying no part is almost just the motivator, and it's just having an alignment in what am I focusing on for this month or this quarter or this year. But the results for me were just total clarity and just knowing I was on the right path with the right clients. And as a salesperson, being able to have that autonomy and see it and really believe in myself that that was what was going to work was a great experience, but also the results spoke for themselves. So it was great to see. Now, today in my business, I have, as I mentioned, a core focus. So I'm still a salesperson. I sell every day. And what I find really interesting is that when I'm speaking to prospects, as there's an inbound inquiries can be anybody. So you really have to make sure your filter is turned up and on and is working. Because when you're doing outbound, it's a lot easier to just find the people you want to work with and go directly to them. Whereas your inbound leads can be a bit of everything. And so that's where I think your filter needs to be turned on and turned up higher for those inbound, because we want to make sure that we are filtering and saying no at that stage. If then from an outbound perspective, we need to get really clear on why and how and who they are that we want to say yes to, and look out for those flags that we need to then start saying no to. And so for me, I feel like I always need that reflection. I have not done it perfectly since I did the year of the no all those years ago. But what I have found is that by having that filter as my level one, that's something that will allow me to come back to it time and time and time again. I've found then that the fire element is that I'm not having to fire, that I would work through that contract, and when we get to the end and decide that's it and learn from that. So I feel like the firing part we've not had to do much of because the filter part is there. And then the fuel piece is then looking at what's going to work. So who's coming in. And I find the more that we refine who we're working with and how many offers we have out there, it makes a massive impact. Now, towards the end of last year, end of 2024, I worked with a strategist to help refine some of our offerings because I felt that we had all these awesome things that people wanted and we were getting lots of these inquiries. But I just found that there were all these bits and stages and phases and options. And I was struggling to keep up with it. And therefore, your message just isn't very clear from a marketing perspective. And so at the end of the year, we cut out probably about 70% of what we were offering. And now we have two really core offers, which allow us to align. Now, a lot of the clients we work with, so vendors and resellers, they have lots of services. And how I would attribute this process to that is that I would get really clear on the core focus of the size and the type and what you're going in with. And if I think of organizations out there that have really nailed it, they're providing a managed service, which is all incumbent. It's very specific, it's very tailored, it's very driven towards a type of industry. And what we're finding, or what they're finding, is that they're able to really refine that message, but also have a really core alignment and offering and onboarding and set of systems that helps them deliver incredible service whilst managing expectations. And so I would really encourage you to think about, what do you need to say no to in your business, in your sales processes? What are you tolerating that's keeping you small or keeping you stuck? And a lot of that can be attributed to, if you think about clients, and we talk about ideal clients a lot, is that ideal clients are ideal for many reasons. And often we look at an ideal client based on the size and how much money we make. But what we often don't look at is how painful they are to deal with and how much money it takes to handle and manage that client. And so I'd encourage you to do an assessment of your clients, work out who they are, build your own filter, and think about, are there any there you need to fire? Are there any there that don't quite make that cut? And what do you need to change for the future? Because some businesses can switch back in. It's just that for right now, or for as you're building this process, they may need the ability to review it. So I recommend that you highlight the ideal, that filter, build upon that filter, make sure the filter is turned up and turned high when you're looking at inbound, because that's often where they're quite sporadic and we're not really necessarily highlighting who's coming through. Your outbound is an easier process to follow when it comes to a filter. So definitely leverage that. And then don't be afraid to fire or afraid to say no to things in those instances, because it will set you free. It will allow you to build a stronger, more robust pipeline. It will allow you to bring the right people into your business. And when you say no to somebody or get rid of somebody, you're able to create space in your business that will allow others to come in and allow you to do the work that you've been put here to do and do a great job at that.